Welcome to another episode of the Reckless Paradise Podcast, everyone. I am your co-host, Dystro. Marissa is still not here with us this week because she is still a little bit under the weather right now. But with that being said, thank you for your thoughts and prayers. To wish her better health at this time. She will try to be back, hopefully by Sunday. It's the last episode of the month, so we want her to, get better, and hopefully she'll will be better by the time this Sunday comes out. Anyway, tonight's episode is another Rivalries episode, and this one is kind of a rivalry that spanned like almost 8 years. Um, we are going to be talking about, well, I should say, I am going to be talking about the Dean Ambrose versus Seth Rollins rivalry. Now, if you do not know who these two guys are, they are multiple time, like tag team champs, former Intercontinental champs, former United States champions, and former WWE World Heavyweight champions. Now, this rivalry had spanned, or should I say started, it started in 2011 and it ended, quote unquote, ended in 2019 when Dean, or should I say Mox, was leaving the WWE to go to pursue AEW, and Seth Rollins has been still there to this day, burning it down with his Fashion Nova sense. But I think the rivalry as a whole, like in 2014, that's where I think a lot of people will probably start the rivalry there. Because probably not a lot of people watched FCW, now NXT in 2011, because 2011 was not really a good year, somewhat for WWE. You just never know. Um, but let's start with 2011. In 2011, both Seth and Dean, they were both on the FCW roster, and Seth at the time, he was the 15 gig champion. And what that was is a title where it is a it's a chain necklace, a 15, I guess, karat gold necklace or something. Um, and its premise, I should say, it's a championship that is normally under 15-minute Iron Man rules. And if that amount of time proves to be inadequate for the wars that these men had waged against each other, it ends in a draw. But if nobody can get pinfalls on either person, it ends in a draw. But this rivalry started in FCW. And not a lot of people talk about FCW, which is kind of sad. Florida Championship Wrestling now turned into, NXT, like I said. And NXT from 2011 to now, it's grown so much because you had Seth Rollins, you had Dean Ambrose, you had Roman Reigns, you had Big E, you had Curtis Axel, you had Kyle O'Reilly, Adam Cole, Bobby Fish, Roderick Strong, Drew McIntyre coming back, Andrade Cien Almas, so you had all these people from then and now, which you have like Josh Briggs, Brooks Jensen, you have uh, Creed Brother going up to the main roster and stuff. So you have like some good talent in NXT as a whole, but these two men kind of put each other on the map for NXT, and then going into the main roster, which we'll get into in a little bit. Now, Dean had made his debut for the WWE in 2011, and in that time, he was doing the indies, so he was doing like I guess he was doing Chikara, he was doing CZW, and all that stuff, and he was gunning for championship gold. He was gunning for Rollins, who was the champ at the time, and um, he made his impact known. And he had the exact same lunatic fringe that we know today in FCW, and he was gunning, for the FCW 15 champ Seth Rollins, and it was a gold medal hanging around his neck, and the premise, like I said, the premise for that championship is normally 15-minute Iron Man rules, and in their first match that they had with each other, they could not get a pinfall over each other, so it proved to be inadequate and turned out to be a draw. And now the second time that they've met, they upped the ante a little bit. They added like 5 extra minutes, so it was a 20-minute Iron Man match, and the clock expired, and they were both trading forearm shots and all that stuff, and then they fell through the set, and the image of them exhausted and on the concrete was fitting. They would push each other not long after this, having a series of collisions that ended in no clear winner, and then the time expired again, and they even bumped up to half an hour the next time out. Near the end of the bout, Rollins super kicked Ambrose into the corner. The challenger refused to fall, wobbling over to his foe, taking another boot to the mush, and then put on a tremendous display, which ended up Rollins getting the win in the end over Dean Ambrose. Now, I think they pushed each other to their limits, and you could tell that they've always had good chemistry with each other. We'll get to the 2014 stuff in a little bit, but they've always had good chemistry. They've always had good chemistry as partners, enemies, doing promos and all that stuff. But then more violence and victories were on their way, but not before the enemies joined forces. And then fast forward to 2012 Survivor Series, the infamous moment where the Shield made their debut with Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, and Seth Rollins teaming up together as a unit and going on this undefeated streak for maybe a year and a half, maybe more. I could be wrong about that. And gaining titles along the way. U.S. Championship for Dean, who's like the longest reigning United States champion at that point. Seth and Roman picking up the tag title from Team Hell No at Extreme Rules in a Tornado tag team match, and they've been proving since day one that they've been in WWE. They've always been proving that they are the best at what they do and dominating. And the numbers game, like they've always been beating up John Cena every week. They've always beaten up like anybody and everybody. And you can tell that, at the time, creative was pushing them hard. Not like, like Roman was getting pushed down our throats in like 2015 and 2016. But at the end of the day, it's like the only two people that were not getting the same limelight was Dean and Seth. And Seth is a really good competitor. Like if I can pick a match that I know is good, go back to, it's either 2013 or 2014, I can't remember, but it was an episode of Raw, and it was Daniel Bryan versus Seth Rollins when he was still in the Shield. That match, hands down, is like a phenomenal case for why Seth is so good at his job and so good at what he does. Anyway, a little bit of a ramble there. Back to Survivor Series 2012. So Ryback was looking to have CM Punk's number, and the Shield pounced on him and put him through an announce table, making his first statement. They've been using power bombs and beatdowns and swarming his enemies like locusts. Most fans had not seen Ambrose and Rollins' battles with each other before the Shield's formation. A new narrative now washed over that story and introduced them as mercenaries in search of destruction, with no mention of their relationship at FCW. Now, superstars would try to, super teams, let's just say that, super teams would try to stop them, but the Shield would always knock them down until Ambrose kind of got a little cocky with the championship, the United States Championship around his waist. And, after Rollins and Reigns had lost the tag titles, Ambrose would grow boastful about, still possessing gold. And then it kind of was getting, like he was getting more defiant and more focused on himself. It would seem clear that, the group would be falling apart. It would be thanks to his doing. And then most of the tension was between Reigns and Ambrose. The two would bark at each other a lot, and then Rollins would come in to play peacemaker. And then it kind of was starting to fall apart at the crack a little bit when at the 2014 or 2013, I can't remember, but 2013, 2014, let's just say that time frame, that Rumble where Ambrose would try to oust or Reigns from the Rumble, and then the two teammates had grown tension during the matches, and then at one point Reigns mocked Ambrose for not defending the U.S. title enough. I think at that 2014 Rumble, that's when, or 2013, I can't remember, sorry. I think it's either one of those Rumbles that Reigns had eliminated Ambrose and Rollins at the exact same time. And you can see that, Reigns was kind of being designed as the bigger star of the trio, which is kind of sad. But it looked intimate at the end. But then you had the rivalry with the Wyatt family, and the Wyatt family versus Shield at Elimination Chamber 2014 was like the best match on the card of that evening. I'm not gonna front you on that. And RIP to Bray Wyatt, and Luke Harper. That match alone was like it 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 brought me back into wrestling a little bit because 6-man tag team wrestling, it's not really my thing. But then when you have the two most dominant trios in WWE at that point, the Wyatts and the Shield, who's gonna come out on top? Who's gonna beat each other's ass? And who's gonna win at the end of the day? Well, the Wyatts had won at the end of the day because you had to keep them looking strong going into Mania with Cena because Bray was facing Cena at the time, and you couldn't make them feel or look weak going into Mania that year, and it's like we'll get to the Bray stuff in like maybe a future episode or something, but I think it was a good move to make the Wyatts look dominant over the Shield, because Bray was kind of like tiptoeing in waters a little bit, and then you had like Harper and Rowan kind of almost doing something with the tag team division. Never gave them a fair shake as like singles competitors. I think Harper was probably like, well, Harper and Bray were like the only two people that I know that could probably do singles gold. Eric, not so much. Sorry, Eric. But a rivalry with the Wyatt family strained the group's relationship. It had Reigns and Ambrose bickering and compelled Rollins to abandon his team mid-battle with Wyatt's crew. To discuss its issues, the Shield met on SmackDown in 2014, March of 2014, if you want to go to that specific month there. The summit saw Rollins slap Ambrose in the jaw, and Ambrose retaliated with a haymaker. This was not the catalyst for a feud between them, though, but a burst of violence that had brought them together again. Thoughts of the Shield's final days faded as Rollins and company fought the reformed Evolution, which those two matches that they had at Extreme Rules and Payback that year, I think those were two of the greatest matches of all time. I think that's my opinion, but those two matches were so freaking good. I'm kind of not biased, but I'm kind of salty that they had a main event, a pay-per-view in Payback, which you had the WWE Championship on your show. You had the World Heavyweight Championship on your show, and that could have not main evented. I can see why, but that's just a little nitpick for me. But then the Extreme Rules match was like really good as well. Not gonna count or not gonna cap on that. But then Evolution, broke up and all that stuff. So then fans could see that battling big names in Randy Orton, Batista, and Triple H was meant to be a springboard for the emerging stars of the Shield. Beyond that, it was a setup for Rollins' exit. After taking down Evolution and Payback, Rollins revealed that he was aligning himself with the Triple H-led Authority, which I thought that was like the greatest swerve of all time. It was called, I guess, the chair shot heard around the world. Rollins stabbing Reigns in the back, stabbing Ambrose in the back, his two brothers in the back for power and money. And Rollins, turning into this authority figure for the Authority. Not a henchman, but a kind of like a leader within the Authority. Springboard his heel turn to new heights. Whereas, made Rollins and Ambrose like super ultra baby faces in the end. And I thought it was such a good turn. Nobody saw it coming, which was like the perfect time to do that. I think that Rollins as a heel was better than Ambrose as a heel. And Ambrose as a heel, yeah, it worked for the time, but he worked so much better as a babyface. And you could literally, like, if I can paint a picture here, 2016 Ambrose as a face, going for the WWE Championship, and he faced, Triple H when he won it from the Rumble in 2016, like ousting, Reigns and stuff. And Triple H, he didn't really need the title. He didn't really need it because, it's, just one more mark to etch onto his, already, fucking resume. And Ambrose, fighting for the WWE Championship against Triple H at Roadblock in 2016. But then it's he gets bumped down to a Brock Lesnar feud that didn't really need to happen. He didn't really need to face Brock. He really needed to face Triple H to have his moment in the sun and win the world title for the first time in his damn career. Not, the next year or later on that month or later on that year. Because with the brand split and all that shit. And it sucked because, a lot of people were really, really focused on Ambrose at that time, and they really wanted to see him succeed, but he had to be put into a damn Brock feud that really didn't go anywhere. It was maybe 6-7 minutes of him being suplexed and using some weapons, and that's it. But Rollins, on the other hand, he had a very decorated career. He's a multiple time tag team champion, multiple time world champion, multiple time, I guess, U.S. champion, I guess, and multiple time or maybe single reign of the Intercontinental champion. So he's a Grand Slam champion in his own right. Same with Reigns and Rollins, or Reigns and Ambrose. I'm sorry, Reigns and Ambrose, and it's sad, Ambrose couldn't have done more in the WWE. He still had good matches, but it's some of these feuds didn't really go anywhere. Sorry, that's a little tangent, but let me get back to the topic at hand. Chair shot to Reigns signaled the end of the Shield. Another blast to Ambrose led the fuse for a feud that continues to this day. Kind of, but this is just based on an article from 2019, so bear with me. Fury filled the lunatic fringe. After the betrayal, he promised to rearrange Rollins' face telling fans what his enemy would look like after he mangled him. There will be plenty of room where your teeth used to be, Ambrose said. He would spend the next few months trying to fulfill that macabre promise. So, the summer of 2014 was an arranged Ambrose chasing down Rollins, and Ambrose's hunger for vengeance traveled through the screen. Rollins, meanwhile, morphed into the one of WWE's best heels as a slimy sellout. He traded in the garb from his days with the Shield for more corporate attire. He became the centerpiece of the Authority, constantly flocked by goons, perpetually supported by the higher-ups in WWE's fictional hierarchy. That alliance helped Rollins win the Money in the Bank ladder match at Ambrose's expense. It paid to have a giant man like Kane entering the fray, corporate Kane, of course, with the express purpose of assuring him a win. The Money in the Bank briefcase then became the tangible object in Ambrose's sights. It replaced the FCW Jack Briscoe 15 Championship and preceded the WWE World Title as the carrot that Ambrose galloped toward and that Rollins kept tight between his fingers. Rollins found himself on the run at every turn. Ambrose popped out of a president to attack him. At Battleground, he walloped Rollins in the parking lot. When Rollins tried to make use of his Money in the Bank briefcase, Ambrose was there to derail his plans any which way. Ambrose found a way to make Rollins' life a living hell. Even a Rollins mannequin wasn't safe. Ambrose tortured a Rollins-like doll on live TV. WWE wisely delayed the gratifying sight of Ambrose finally getting his revenge. At SummerSlam that year, the two battled in almost at a Los Angeles street fight. A lumberjack match that ended with Kane in a briefcase to the skull, making sure Rollins escaped. On the Raw the next night, the Raw after SummerSlam, the two faced in a stellar Falls Count Anywhere match that is highly regarded as like one of the best Falls Count Anywhere matches to this day. This built on their battles at FCW, improving upon their previous work. Rollins and Ambrose were grown as performers, and it showed, having a brighter spotlight and a story that WWE's writing team provided. Apple attention helped as well. As he had done so often before, Rollins came out on top. He used a stack of cinder blocks to put Ambrose out of action and off TV for a few months. In reality, this was to explain why Ambrose was gone, because he was filming a movie at the meantime. In the WWE world, it was a despicable act that furthered a feud. Ambrose returned months later at Night of Champions, fist flying to play the part of a Predator on the chase again. He defeated John Cena to earn the right to face his old friend at Hell in a Cell, which that's like one of the all-time greatest like Hell in a Cell matches, I think, in my opinion, and even main event of the show. So that was good on WWE's part. That's where these two up-and-comers rekindled fans' love for that specialty match. They bashed each other into the steel, the structure designed to keep Rollins from slipping away again and to give Ambrose a legit shot at payback. To a degree, he achieved that. He whipped Rollins for much of that night. In a bit of poetic justice, he pushed Rollins' head against cinder blocks of his own. And then Bray Wyatt emerged from the darkness to sink his teeth into Ambrose. The fan favorite didn't get his vengeance. He got distracted by a new enemy, and this was WWE pushing pause on the story. Less than a year later, the company resumed it. So, that Wyatt Ambrose story didn't really pan out too much. It wasn't a bad feud. It's just because Wyatt didn't have really anything to sink his teeth into until they were saying, kind of put a pause on the Dean and Seth rivalry a little bit. So Ambrose wandered from feud to feud on the mid-card. Rollins was busy climbing to the world champion status. Ambrose lost several times to Wyatt, failed to dethrone Bad News Barrett, and even toppled Luke Harper. Rollins, meanwhile, he has inserted himself into the WrestleMania main event, taking home the company's prize in spite of Brock Lesnar being the one who had it in his grasp. in his grasp. And then, it went from Rollins to Reigns in the main event, but not Ambrose. Rollins held the WWE title. Reigns, remained in contention over the next few months. Ambrose failed to win on pay-per-view events and didn't get nearly the kind of attention those men received. But in a surprise move, Kane gave the Lunatic Fringe a shot at joining the WWE title match at Payback by defeating Rollins, and Ambrose won his way into a fatal four-way, which was Rollins, Reigns, Ambrose, and Randy Orton. The Shield triple threat that we really wanted to have until we didn't get until like later on in 2016. But I thought, it was like a really good match on paper. Rollins and Reigns were on the same side just long enough to send Randy through the announce table, and then they were back to being enemies. After the match, the Authority said Ambrose had to go to the back of the line after losing. Rollins dismissed Ambrose's challenges, calling back on an attack he once suffered. Ambrose held Rollins' head against cinder blocks, demanding a title shot. He now has that. Some of these wording I can't remember. In the latest meeting between these two, the WWE title was on the line. At Elimination Chamber, their feud takes center stage. This was their latest chance to prove themselves, to use each other as springboards to somewhere higher. SCW, they launched each other into the WWE proper. Last year, they pushed their way into headlining status on the strength of their own battles with each other. In their next fight, they look to prove WWE right by placing them on the marquee, and then the past tells us that they will deliver excellence in the ring, and this will not be the final chapter. Their story is a novel on road pages await. Now, the feud as a whole, was it good? Yes. The matches were good? Yes. I say, it won Feud of the Year that year in 2014 too. The Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose rivalry, it didn't go a lot over, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, but 2017 they realigned again and they became tag team partners, and they had two really good matches with the Bar that year over the Raw tag team titles at SummerSlam 2017 and No Mercy 2017. And No Mercy 2017 was where Cesaro had his two front teeth lodged into his mouth, and it was a gruesome sight. But they became Raw Tag Team Champions in 2017, and then, they feuded against the Bar, and then a little bit, moving forward a little bit, 2018 going into 2019, it was like they went their separate ways, did their own thing, and then Dean was gone for a few months, maybe almost to a year at this point. Comes back, it's this big, huge moment. The Shield's reunited again, and then Rollins and Ambrose win the tag titles again for like the third time. And then Dean turns on Rollins and becomes a heel, and this really didn't go anywhere. Like, towards the end of 2019, with the feud, it just became sour. It just didn't go anywhere. Which like kind of sucked because it's like, we didn't get to see Dean as the heel in that story. Seth was like a perfect heel in that story in 2014. But it's like the whole thing was like with Dean's, like, because he was becoming like not like a germaphobe or something, but he had like a hazmat mask on, and like he was like trying to protect himself from germs and all that stuff, and it was like playing into the Roman Reigns leukemia stuff and all that crap, and then they had an X-nay on that shit, and then it's like it ends with a almost like 30-minute match for the IC title between Dean and Seth at TLC in 2018 or 2019. and then like it just really didn't end like abrupt. It just ended abruptly because it's like one curb stomp from Seth to Dean, and it was like done and dusted. And then Seth and Dean, like, they entered the Royal Rumble at 2019, and they barely had an interaction with each other in that match. And then it's like Dean's gone. He's gone to AEW and doing his own thing. And then Seth, he goes on to win the Universal title at WrestleMania 35 in 2019. So it's like, who got the short end of the stick? Probably Dean. But the rivalry itself in 2014 was the main crux of this episode. The 2014 rivalry between Dean and Seth was perfect. It was really, really perfect. And it put both of them on the map, and they became mainstays in the wrestling industry to this day. When you think of, like, what was the best feud of 2014, you would always think of Seth and Dean. And if I could say a match that you could take away from this episode, I would say the lumberjack match from SummerSlam, or the Falls Count Anywhere match that they had the night after SummerSlam. But that is all the time we have for this episode. Let us know what you guys think of this rivalry in the comments down below. We really do appreciate that. Now, this Sunday, hopefully, Marissa will be back in time. This Sunday is the final episode of January, and we're hitting this bad boy off with a good note. We are going back to 2006 in Wrestling Year in Review for 2006. Now, we are going to be doing from January to December. It could be anything WWE, it could be anything TNA related, it could be indies, whatever. We always go over like what happened during that time period, who had entered the wrestling world, who had passed, and who had retired in that time frame as well. It's always fun when we do these because I love taking notes. I love sharing my expertise and my nostalgia and my thoughts about certain time periods in wrestling. I know Marissa does as well, but I am so looking forward to this episode, people. But that being said, thank you guys so much for listening or watching this. Please give us a like and subscribe. We do really appreciate it. And follow us on social media. We have Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We have YouTube, which you're watching this or listening to this on right now. Okay. So, at the time of recording, I am at 1,123. Yes, I'm still in that little range right now, but the goal is to hit 1,200 subscribers either on or before Valentine's Day. I think that is doable, but I gotta have you guys, you gotta keep watching, you gotta subscribe, tell all your friends, tell your loved ones, tell your grandma, tell your dog to subscribe, and even though, he doesn't have opposable thumbs. But it really helps me out, it helps us out. We are so close to 300 subscribers on the podcast channel. You guys are killing it. We do really appreciate you. Also, I have Song of the Night, and my song is from a trio called The Warning. Now, if you don't know who The Warning is, you've been living under a rock, because these three girls are going to take over the world by storm. I guarantee you. They've already, been touring with maybe like Foo Fighters. They've been touring with a lot of people. And my song is called Evolve by The Warning. And it is really in your face kind of music, and I love that kind of music. So, with that being said, the warning with Evolve, or the Evolve by the warning. And that's it. I will see you this Sunday. Hopefully Marissa will be there this Sunday too. She'll tell you all about her COVID stuff at the time by next month when we do Shoot the Shit. But that's it. And we will see you guys this Sunday for Wrestling Interview 2006. Peace!